What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. So we have Gennady Golovkin fighting on the weekend. First, I want to talk a little bit about Victor Ortiz and Luis Collazo's win over Victor Ortiz last night. Kind of give you my post-fight, what's next for Victor, all in one episode. Now, as far as Collazo versus Ortiz, I did not do a prediction video, and that was simply because, not because I didn't have enough time, surprisingly. It was because I interviewed Luis Collazo, and I didn't want to have any kind of conflict of interest where people thought I was making my prediction based solely on the fact of me interviewing him. Because some people tend to do that, you know what I mean? Like if you look at Ellie Sekback, and this is not a diss, but Ellie Sekback, he does a lot of work in the Robert Garcia gym. So obviously he's going to favor Brandon Rios or Maidana or whoever's going, you know what I mean? Just the nature of the beast. So I didn't do a prediction video. I will say, to be 100% honest, I was hoping for Collazo to win, and I thought he was capable of winning, and I was probably leaning towards picking him for a variety of reasons. I didn't think it would be in the fashion that he did win. I didn't think it would like a second round. I wouldn't have said that, just to be perfectly honest. I wouldn't have called it a second. I didn't think he was going to knock him out, period, even in the later rounds. I thought it would be a Collazo win via unanimous or maybe even a split decision. I thought it'd be a really competitive fight. And Collazo showed up, and he did Brooklyn proud. Now, as far as the fight itself, I think the reason I picked Collazo to begin with is because Collazo's been on the bad side of a lot of decisions in the past. If you look at Ricky Hatton, Andre Berto, fights that could have really went other way, but he was facing opponents who had bigger names than himself. So sometimes due to politics that happens. Look at Chavez Jr. versus Brian Vera. Brian Vera is not a household name to the same way Julio Cesar Chavez is. So I think boxing politics kind of swayed the judges based on the more popular name. You just assume that they did more, even though the fight in the rounds might tell you something different. Now, again, I wouldn't have picked Collazo to win via stoppage, but I thought Victor Ortiz made some crucial mistakes going even before the fight. I'm talking about before the opening bell. His crucial mistakes were, you're off the Mayweather loss. Then you're off a second consecutive loss to Josito Lopez, another upset where Josito wasn't expected to beat you. You received and sustained a broken jaw in that fight. Obviously, you have to go through the healing process. I'm fully aware of that. I understand how injuries work. I mean, you could look at guys like Kobe Bryant and other sports who kind of try to come back too soon, don't fully recuperate and rest their body. Sergio Martinez, if you want to talk about boxing, after the Chavez Jr., he went up against a big guy in Martin Murray, somebody who's a good fighter, and he didn't look great. He looked pretty shitty in that fight. Sometimes you have to rest and recuperate your body and nurse your injury before you come back so you don't re-aggravate it, i.e. Sergio Martinez, i.e. Kobe Bryant. So that was one mistake, is Victor Ortiz gave himself too much rest. And the too much rest stems from not that you waited the duration for your injury to heal. Like the doctors say, let's say 4 to 6 months. I don't know the exact time for a broken jaw to heal. But let's say it's 6 months, 6 to 8 months. He was out of the ring for 19 months. And that was because instead of coming back when he was cleared from the doctor to come back to the sport of boxing, instead of coming back, he chose to go Dancing with the Stars, and he was on there for whatever length of time. I don't watch the show, so I don't know. But he got kicked off, and he could have came back after that. Golden Boy announced he's not coming back because he's filming The Expendables 3 with Sylvester Stallone and Arnold and all them. So those are two personal decisions you made to stay out of boxing. And I'm never the type to go after somebody or hate on somebody. I don't have to. There's no reason to. So I'm not hating. Get your money. But boxing is a type of sport where you can't have one foot out and one foot in. It's either 110% dedication or this is the type of shit that can happen. Some people maybe are gifted enough to the point where it doesn't happen to them, but there's always going to be someone that wants it more than you, that's hungrier than you. And I think Luis Collazo showed just that. He doesn't have an underwear modeling campaign. He doesn't have a movie role in an action flick that's coming out in the summer or whatever. He doesn't have that. Boxing is his life. Like, boxing is what he does. This is what he lives and breathes. He spends some time in the Brooklyn area coaching and mentoring some of the up and coming kids who are into boxing. He said on the interview before the fight, he has two brothers in Puerto Rico, 21 and like 18 or 19. They're both in jail. One's doing life and the other one's doing 7 years. The brother that's doing life got a murder beef. So this is real. This is like real life type shit. Whereas Victor Ortiz, you're filming movies and stuff, and like I said, get your money. That's cool, but you got to make that conscious career decision. So I think staying out of the sport for 19 months was horrible. And then not only staying out, you went out and came back to opponent like Luis Colazo, someone who's a game opponent. He's tough even in his losses. He didn't look horrible, you know what I mean? Not getting knocked out, so you know he has a chin. It's just not a good look. Maybe you should have tried a lighter opponent. Now, I'm not trying to sound contradictory because I know they were talking about Victor Ortiz versus Alfonso Gomez at a point in time. And I simply said I didn't really favor that fight. It just wasn't a fight. But now looking at it, maybe he should have came back to an Alfonso Gomez. I don't know. I'm not in his training camp, so I didn't know how he was looking. But everything, if you put everything in the pot, and then, you know what I mean, it's easier to say obviously in hindsight, but you take a look at everything, a snapshot of what actually happened, and it was a formula for disaster. Then that's not even including Victor Ortiz mentally and his temperament. This dude is getting on interviews. Shout out to the Boxing Voice. I think they were the one that captured the interview and uploaded it first. And he's talking about Josecito Lopez and Marcos Maidana aren't on his level. Two guys that stopped you. You quit in the Maidana fight, and then Josecito Lopez, you quit in that because you had a broken jaw, which is understandable. But he's just talking crazy, you know what I mean? And Luis Colazo, just from talking to him, he's one of the most down-to-earth, humble dudes in boxing that I've dealt with, that I've had the pleasure of interviewing or whatnot. Just real chill, cool, calm dude. And Victor Ortiz is a little bit over the top, just mentally fragile. And all of these things equate to what you saw last night. He came back to a really stern opponent in Luis Colazo. You took 19 months off, and even when you were cleared to come back, you didn't come back. That ring rust is a motherfucker. Watch Kendall Holt versus Lamont Peterson. Peterson was testing positive for high levels of testosterone, and if you look at the first couple rounds, he didn't look that great, even though he was able to later stop Kendall Holt. The first two rounds, he looked a little ring rusty. And unless your name is Floyd Mayweather or Pacquiao, most people, especially Mayweather, Pacquiao, I think, had a year layoff before Brandon Rios, and he came back looking stellar. Same thing with Pacquiao or Mayweather. Mayweather took almost 2 years off, came back and completely dominated Marquez. They're anomalies. They're elite level, you know what I mean? So unless your name's, like I said, Mayweather or Pacquiao, that's not the norm. It's not normal for the average fighter to come back after that long of a layoff and look superb. Far too many people, or there's fewer people that can actually do that. So it was just a recipe for disaster, in my opinion, for Victor Ortiz. Another thing, he came out too energetic, like he was trying to make a statement, and you got to realize, like, Luis Colazo, he fought Shane Mosley, Andre Berto before Berto had taken these losses. He's fought Ricky Hatton before Ricky Hatton had taken a loss. So you look at his resume. This is a guy who's been in there. He's came up the hard way. Tough fights he was expected to lose, and he gave those fighters a run for their money. You know what I mean? So Victor Ortiz, he came out too aggressive, too fast, like he was trying to use Luis Colazo and a victory over him to make a statement. And that's not the opponent you want to do that, especially when you've been out of the sport almost 20 fucking months. So that's just my thoughts on it. Where does Victor Ortiz go from here? I don't really know, man. And I've said this in my videos before. Like recently, I forgot what video it is, but I did a video and I stated, when it comes to predictions, 9.9999999% of the time out of 10, if a fighter has showed me that they're unreliable, inconsistent, they are mentally fragile, like they'll fold, they're the type to fold like lawn chairs, and they're going against someone who has showed me consistency, like a Luis Colazo or like X, Y, and Z, majority of the time, I will pick against the fighter who showed me inconsistency. And I think I talked about it in a video where I was talking about Danny Garcia, because I remember another example of this was Danny Garcia versus Zab Judah. People told me I was crazy. They're like, Zab Judah's going to kill him. He's a southpaw. He's fast, power in both hands. And I'm like, I realize that. Danny Garcia is much slower than Zab Judah. He looks like he's open because he has these wide looping punches. And stylistically, on paper, Zab Judah should have murdered Danny Garcia. But the reason I said in my prediction video, go back to it, I told you one of the most significant reasons I picked against Zab Judah is because he has not showed me that consistency that would warrant me picking him. I bet on Zab Judah before in the past, and I lost money. I'm like, oh yeah, he'll beat X, Y, and Z. He'll beat Mayweather. He'll beat Paulie Malignaggi. He'll beat Carlos fucking Baldomir. And then he didn't, and I'm the one out of money or looking like an idiot for riding with him. So that's just my stance. If you know anything about me and my prediction, if you don't show me consistency, then it's most likely you'll get picked again, unless you're fighting a taxi cab driver or a bum or something. If it's a fight like Lucas Matisse or Danny Garcia where both fighters are consistent, those are fights where they're harder to pick. Or even a Lamont Peterson versus a Lucas Matisse. Those are harder fights for me to predict because they've showed me a level of consistency. And they both seem hungry. They both seem dedicated. But if a fighter is not showing me consistency, majority of the times I'll pick against them. And that's exactly what Victor Ortiz has shown. He's been very spotty. He looked great against Andre Berto, weathered storms. He showed he had the ability to be aggressive and effective. I've seen fights where he boxes a lot more. I've seen fights where he tries to brawl. I've seen fights where he showed heart. I've seen fights where he didn't show any heart and gave up and quit. Victor Ortiz in the Collazo fight last night, he was using his head. In the Mayweather fight, he used his head. In the Josecito Lopez fight, I think he got frustrated and was rabbit punching or hitting Lopez in the back of the head. He's just not consistent. So it's really hard for me to pick for him in fights. He has skill, he has talent, he's big, he's beast, but I just can't pick for a person who's that spotty. And as far as Canelo, they were talking about, oh, if Ortiz gets past Collazo and stuff, the fight that they were talking about during the Lopez days, he's going to possibly fight Canelo. Canelo would absolutely kill Victor Ortiz. Because at the very least, Canelo took his lumps and took his ass whooping. Fuck what he said after, if he said Mayweather ran or whatever. But during the fight, he, in my opinion, he didn't seem like he wanted to give up. He just looked outclassed and outmatched and bewildered. He didn't know what to do against Mayweather. He was frustrated or whatever. But I felt like he was actively trying to cut off the ring. He was trying a couple different things. It didn't look good because he was in there against a masterclass boxer like Mayweather. But I don't feel like Canelo just gave up, like, fuck it. I don't care. I want to get knocked out. I want to get embarrassed. And he went the distance with Mayweather. So since Canelo has showed me that, plus he's big, plus he's a boxer puncher, there's no way I'll pick Victor Ortiz in that fight if they were to even consider making this fight anymore. Let me know what you guys think. Victor Ortiz, what's next for him? Shout out to Luis Colazo again, down to earth, very humble. Shout out to whole Brooklyn. A lot of good stuff coming from the BK. Let me know what you guys think. As always, hate, comment, or subscribe. Till next video, it's Ego signing off.